Hosea is one of the first prophets that really kind of appear in the Bible. He's amongst the first of them, in the first group of them. And he was a prophet of God. And this is all about reflections. Sometimes God has to give us a reflection in order to see the real thing. And the reason he does that is because he's so big, we have to have something to relate to. It's kind of hard to relate to God. How many of you find it kind of hard, have found it in your lifetime, kind of rather difficult to relate to God? Find him, God, you're so big, how am I supposed to find you anyway, right? All right. Well, sometimes he gives us a reflection, like as in a mirror. It makes it easier picture to see. And that's what Hosea, this book is all about, reflections. That slide up there says to go deeper. That's what we're going to do today, go a little bit deeper. And this is we could call this a love story gone wrong, because that's how we can relate. How many of you ever have any love stories in your life that have gone wrong? All right. Love story gone wrong and a need for correction. Here's our reflections here. So how many of you know God has emotions? Just like you do. Does anybody in here not have emotions? No hands are up. No. Daniel, you have emotions? Okay. Huh? You have them. I know you have them. Yeah, okay. They can run from, I just threw these up here, anger, or love and anger and compassion, frustration, and righteousness. And I've tried to make my little faces kind of match those across the realm. But it's reflections, and you can see here, it's like this would be God and this would be you. You're a reflection of Jesus in the mirror. Okay? If you can grab hold of that concept, that will make this lesson a lot easier. So we could call this Hosea's pageant. Not the sound of music, but like a pageant, a play that goes on. And this is as a play. It's as a play. It's not a play, but it's as a play. The children of Israel should refer to it very often. If you're one of the children of Israel, you should refer to the book of Hosea quite often. And if it's a pageant, then I just put this in here. Starring Hosea as the prophet. Hosea the prophet is God, and Gomer, he's got a wife, and we'll get introduced to her in a moment here. The wife of Hosea as Israel. So we've got, somebody tell me what I just said. Okay, we've got Hosea the prophet as God. That's how we can relate to that, the reflection of that. And Gomer, his wife, the wife of Hosea as Israel, the harlot. What does that tell you about his wife? Oh dear. Not very good. Okay. And you are the audience, and you guys are the ones that are supposed to understand this metaphor, because this is as a metaphor. Okay. God says, just as Gomer, he's talking to Hosea now, and he says, just as Gomer, your wife, left you for another, Hosea, Israel has left me for other gods. Wow. Oh. Does that help kind of bring the picture down to something smaller that we can relate to? Okay. Israel has become unfaithful to her covenant with God. You know that you have a covenant with God? You have a covenant with God. It's like a contract. He's asking you to do certain things, and you're saying, okay, yes, I'll do them. And then when you go out and do something totally contrary to that, you're being unfaithful. And thank goodness there's forgiveness of sins, and there's no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus, right? We have to keep our accounts with God short, okay? So the story of Hosea and Gomer, Hosea is the prophet, Gomer is the unfaithful wife, becomes an illustration of Israel's relationship with God. And I put this map up there. Let me keep going here. Just a minute. So we have, this made sense when I made this slide. Here we go. In Hosea's day, Israel was divided into two kingdoms, right? So in Hosea's day, this is after King Saul, after King David, after King Solomon, and then the next king, does anybody know what the next king his name was? His name was, Solomon's son was Rehoboam, so it's after that. So we have, and it's split into two kingdoms. So we have the northern, there were 10 tribes up in the north, where the blue guys are, and 2 tribes down in the south, where the red map is, and that's Judah. And up in the blue tribes, that's the 10 tribes of Israel. So we have 10 tribes in the north, 2 tribes in the south. Guess what? They split over taxes, right? We couldn't agree on the tax structure. So the king of northern Israel, his name was Jeroboam the first. There was 2 Jeroboams. This is Jeroboam the first that did this. He said, "To your tents, O Israel, we're just going to split away." Here they go. That's unfair. We have a split here. In Hosea's time, it's like 250 years later, I think. Hosea, one of the earliest prophets. This is the story of a heart-sick prophet and a heart-broken God. That's what the story is. Yes? On. I'm cutting out. Stop it. Cut it. Right? Okay. So we have a story here of a faithless wife, a future restoration. That faithless wife is chapters 1 and 2 of Hosea. A future restoration, chapter 3. A fickle nation. And a faithful God. And this story is going to take place during Jeroboam II, which is going to be, I'm just giving you some background history. You don't have, there won't be a test on this. And these are the kings that were the kings of Judah during this time. Uzziah, in the year that King Uzziah, we've all heard that one, right, from Isaiah. And Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, King Hezekiah. We should be familiar with these kings. This guy, Ahaz, I indented him because he was the only bad king of these 4. These guys were Uzziah, Jotham, and Hezekiah were good kings. Ahaz was a bad guy. And Jeroboam was a terrible king of Israel. There was not one good king. Of all the kings of Israel, there was not one. Can you say that? There was not one good king of Israel. And very few good kings of Judah. That should give us a hint. We have a problem, right? We have a problem. Okay, so if you could picture this, I use one of McNaughton's artwork. So picture Israelites of the northern 10 tribes. That's who we're dealing with Hosea here for the most part. So I want you to picture this. You trust God, but everywhere in your culture, the king, priests, wealthy nobles have turned everything upside down. Does that sound familiar? Oh, yeah. Okay, just a little bit, right? The people are worshiping idols and other gods. The country is filled with violence and riots. The poor of the land are pushed into prostitution because they can't pay their taxes. They can't pay the rent, whatever. Places of worship are becoming fertility centers. There's so much promiscuity and prostitution going on. That's what was going on in Israel. And all of this while they proclaim to be faithful to God. They're keeping the feasts, they're doing their thing, and they're doing this other stuff too. Their wealth is their claim to God's favor on them. Because all during this time they're going, Hosea's giving them the word of the Lord, the prophet's giving them the word of the Lord, and they're all saying, "What? What's the matter with you? We're doing well. Most of the people were wealthy. Does that sound like the United States of America? Oh, yeah. Right now? Okay, we have to pull ourselves into relating to this stuff. But the Lord would tell you back in Deuteronomy, we're going back to the covenant now. But remember, the Lord says in Deuteronomy 8:18. But remember that it is the Lord your God that gives you the power to gain wealth in order to confirm his covenant that he swore to your ancestors as it is to this day. He said that in Deuteronomy. That was back when it was people were just coming out of the wilderness, right? And it was God who was giving them the power to gain wealth. Make no mistake about it. If you're wealthy, it's God who's given you that power. And if you're not thanking him and treating that in that kind of a manner, then, wow. So there are instructions from God to the prophet Hosea. God comes in now. He's going to talk to Hosea, and he says, "Go and take a wife. And I'm warning you right now, she's not going to be faithful to you. And I want you to have children with her." Remember, this is a reflection. Israel is like her. Israel has departed from the Lord, and the children of Israel have been unfaithful. What is the one thing that every Christian wants to hear when they see Jesus? What's the one sentence? Faithful, yes. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. And here we've got the whole children of Israel have been unfaithful to the Lord. So Hosea, he wasn't just a Johnny, come lately or just a flash in the pan. He was a prophet to Israel for 50 years. And Hosea knew what Moses had warned the people, that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, that God would not tolerate the worship of other gods. Why should he? I'm asking you, why should he? Why is the United States of America putting up with this crap of not worshiping him? We're stupid. Yeah, it's just, at the very minimum, that's stupid. Yes, at the very minimum, not giving God the glory that's due his name. If we were to check Deuteronomy, going back to Deuteronomy 28 and 29 for a refresher course, how many, I put that in the newsletter, did anybody read? Anyway, read that. Read that. That is where the blessings, if they obeyed, are listed, and the curses, if they don't do that, are listed. Right there in Deuteronomy 28. And I'll remind you that Deuteronomy is the book that is the covenant. Deuteronomy is the covenant. Deuteronomy was the book that all the kings were supposed to make their own copy and keep it right next to their throne or their chair or whatever it was that they sat on, and refer to that in dealing with in how to rule God's people. Obviously, they weren't very good at that, were they? Moses even included the warning that God would raise up Gentile nations to discipline his people. Can you say China?
South America, southern border.
Yep. Yep, mostly China. He will raise up Gentile nations. All right. God revealed to Hosea that this is what he was about to bring upon the people of Israel. That's what he was revealing. God doesn't do anything without telling his prophets first what it is he's going to do, which is why we're listening to the prophets. God doesn't raise up the prophets until there's trouble on the way, and then he will raise up prophets in our midst to tell us what's going on. And I mean prophets. I don't mean somebody with the gift of prophecy. I mean prophets. Hosea 14, God tells his people, God always had, this is something we have to remember, God always has a solution to our problem. Okay? There's always a solution to our problem, because he's God and you're not. You know, I mean, if I was God, I wouldn't have this solution. I would just go squish him like a bug, you know. Yeah. Thank goodness. That's why we have to tell God every day, God, thank you that you're God and I'm not. You know, I mean, that's one reason. Anyway, Hosea 14, this is the solution. God says, somebody read that for me, real nice and loud so it gets on the...
Return, Israel, to the Lord your God. Your iniquities have been your downfall. Take words with you and return to the Lord. Say to him, forgive all our iniquity and receive us graciously, that we may offer the fruit of our lips. What
does that sound like to you? Look at that. Return or repent is the same with shuv in Hebrew. It's about turning around, changing your mind about what's going on. Return to the Lord. Change your mind about what's going on and return to the Lord your God. Your iniquities have been your downfall. There's a couple of, well, I'll shut up and I'll get there. I'll show it to you here on the screen just a second. Take words with you. Does that sound like prayers? Take words and declarations and confessions with you when you go to him. And say to him, forgive all our iniquity, there's that word again, and receive us graciously. Wow, this is a jam-packed couple of verses, isn't it? That we may offer the fruit of our lips, that we may come back and praise you again. Is that not the fruit of your lips? Yay! Hello! That's okay, we're glad you're here.
You look a lot tanner. In the corner.
Okay. Cliff, we're in Hosea 14 on this verse right here. I'm about to make it really big and make it really easy for you to read, okay? So there you go. And we must remember that to God, Israel was like his wife. Israel was his wife. Israel, the Bible refers to Israel, his people, as his wife. Okay, it's in the collective. Israel, and God tells his people something here. Hang on just a second, I'm almost there. This is what God desires. This is still in Hosea chapter 14, in verse 6. It says, for I desire mercy, not sacrifice, and acknowledge God rather than burnt offerings. As Adam, they had broken the covenant, and they were unfaithful to me. Wow. So here's our problem, and here's the solution. Okay? Here's the problem, here's the solution. I'm going to make this a little bigger just to make sure we don't lose this. Can we emphasize that any bigger? I can't make that any bigger. Return. Now let's deal with that word iniquity. Okay? A lot of times we think iniquity and sin. Well, what's the difference? Sin has to do, I'll put these words up here. Sin and iniquity are not the same thing. Sin is the word, can you read that? It has to do with missing the mark. You can't read it?
No, it's a het and then what is it?
A het and a tav and an aleph and a hatat. Yeah, hatat, that's it. Thank you. Hatat.
That was a good try.
Yeah, that's real good. And that means missing the mark, like Michael just said. That means missing the mark. Oh, you messed that. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I didn't. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Da 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 da. That was you. Oops, shoot. Just a minute. Just a minute. Come back here. this is the word for iniquity right here. Aven. Aven. That means you did it, knew you did it deliberately, and you do it again. That's what aven is. And that's really offensive to God. Now let's go back up here and read this verse again. Return, Israel. I can't.
To the Lord your God. Right?
Yep.
Your iniquities have been your downfall.
Your iniquities have been your downfall. The stuff that you did it on purpose, you knew you're doing it, you knew it was wrong, and you do it again, by golly. That's deliberate sinning. Knowledgeable, yes. Right? That's what got them into, and that's where they were. That's where a good portion of America, obviously, Bill was just telling me a little bit ago, I gotta wash my head. What a lot of people in secret societies and blah, 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 are doing in this country now. They know that it's wrong. They're deliberately doing what it is that they're doing.
They know and they don't care.
They're committing, and you can't even say sinning. Can you say iniquity? Iniquity? You can't even say that. It's beyond sin. It's evil. It's downright.
Spirit? Is that spirit, or is that different?
That's people have made a decision that they're going to do this.
Okay. So God is such a genius, he gives us children.
Yes. Right, Caroline? Yes.
I don't remember my daughter as much, but I remember my son. I remember it just as clear as it was yesterday, and I would say no when he was little guy, no, Ben, and then he would stop, whatever it was. And I remember the day just as clear, and you do too, when I said no, Ben, and he looked at me, and I knew he knew. And he went right ahead and did it anyway.
And then he was a has-been.
Yeah.
It made me cry because I knew that he had left that innocent part of his life, and now he was entering.
Well, thank goodness he turned that around, you know.
Yeah, he turned out okay.
He did. But there comes a moment when we all become aware. So God is telling them that these people, my people, the children of Israel, have turned to false gods and idols. And God's people had everything mixed up. They were successful, they were wealthy, they were healthy, and they made sacrifices to God and to Baal.
Oh.
To God and to Baal. They thought, well, we're doing the right thing over here, you know. And then they went out and they were sacrificing children. God's people, Israel, are about to bring the curses of Deuteronomy 28 upon themselves in Hosea's day, and hopefully we're becoming aware of that now here in America. But God is doing his part of the covenant. Surely the Lord does nothing without revealing his plan to his servants, the prophets. And that's, where is that? Amos 8, 9, I think, or something like that. God will tell his prophets what's going on. Hosea married Gomer, and they had 3 children. In the midst of all this is what he said. Now go out and marry Gomer, because she's going to be. You guys are going to reflect what it is that it's like to be me. God says, right? You're going to have 3 kids. The first one's going to be call it Jezreel, and what Jezreel means is God. For God will scatter and sow these people to the 4 corners of the earth. He will scatter and sow them to the 4 corners of the earth. You want to talk about harvest? First you have to sow them, then you gather up the harvest. Well, guess what? Where these children of Israel went? They went up through. They went here. They wound up here. Where are you from? Milwaukee? I'm kidding. Where are you from? California. Where are you from? Nebraska, where are you from?
Illinois.
This is how far away all the seeds of the children of Israel were blown by the wind, by the Holy Spirit. Okay? That's all part of his, that was part of his discipline, was also part of his plan. You're it. You're them. You are part of the children of Israel. That's how you got your name, part of the children of Israel. That's how he brought you into the family. Okay? I hate to tell you that, but your ancestors, wherever it is that they're from, they wound up over here in the New World. That's why America has a constitution. That's why America has forefathers, has a what? Has a covenant with God, yes. That's why we're not under a monarchy today, because we're the ones that have been brought out. And boy, are we messing it up. We have messed this up. Most people our age have not read the Constitution. Daniel, have you read the Constitution? Have you studied the Constitution in school yet?
I've read it in 10th grade, but it's been a while.
He's read it, all the parts of it?
Yeah.
3 sections? Caroline, have you read the Constitution?
Yeah.
Atta girl.
Studying it right now.
You're studying it right now? Good.
Constitution.
Good for you.
Oh, yay.
You guys, day's over, don't let me forget it. We're going to pray for this. You guys represent the next generation coming up, and you have no idea how important you are. You think you're just, no. Playing with your iPhone and stuff? No. You guys are very, aren't they?
Yes.
We've got teachers here in the room that know how important you are. Shut up, Susan, and keep going. Here we go. Then have the next kid. The next kid's going to be called Lo Ruama, which means no mercy. This is Hosea 1:6. For God would no longer going to have mercy on this unfaithful people.
Boy, don't we hope so.
And you're going to have a third one. The third one is the first one was a boy. This one was a girl. The third one is called Lo Ami. It literally means not my people. Lo Ami, right here. Not my people. For no longer would they be called God's people. That is quite a statement. That's quite a prophecy from a prophet from God, right? This is what's going to happen to you, Israel, nations of Israel.
Susan,
Yes.
you read those meanings all together in sentence form. Look what it says. For God would scatter these people to the four corners of the earth. For God would no longer have mercy upon these unfaithful people, for they would no longer be called God's people. Wow.
That all happens in the first chapter of Hosea. However, but I'm going to show you how cool your God is. Okay? Why did I put this in here? I need somebody to read that for me, please.
Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And it shall come to pass in the place where it was said to them, You are not my people. There it shall be said of them, You are sons of the living God.
Oh, that's who you are. We're getting closer to who you are, remnant.
Amen.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Then the children of Judah and the children of Israel shall be gathered together, appoint for themselves one head.
One
They
head.
shall come up out of the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel.
Jezreel, which means God scatters and sows. He's going to bring them all together. Now we're talking about, I don't know what we're talking about. It sounds like Ezekiel 37, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
All of a sudden, things are going to come back together. There's only going to be one head over these, and he's going to forgive us. Your God is going to forgive us. Is that a cool God or what?
Yes.
Yes, please.
So my friend Jeff wrote a book, and he used this particular verse to explain how we, the people in the United States, are Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a difference between Israel and Judah.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are numerous in number, and before he married his wife, who is from Australia, and she had heard Obama on the news or something say that the United States was not a Christian nation, she said, well, that's just bunk, because everybody in the world knows the United States is a Christian nation. So you are not my people, but we are.
We are his people.
Always, we are known to the world.
If he had not gone through this exercise with Jezreel and scattered the people to all four corners of the earth, we would be nothing, you know. And notice here, he's is he not on my thing over here? I can't look up there. He's joining the children of Judah and the children of Israel together. They're going to be the stick, Ezekiel's stick right there. Boom. There's only going to be one kingpin over us. Isn't this is, I don't know about you, Pinky, but this is sounding like good news to me. Okay. Despite Gomer's repeated unfaithfulness, she did it again and again, Hosea was to go and to redeem her. That's why Jesus, Yeshua, is our Redeemer. Right? He bought back his own wife. Think about it. He bought back his own wife for 15 pieces of silver. The 15 pieces of silver aren't not the important part of that story. The fact that he had to buy back his own wife. Did Yeshua pay a price for you?
Yes.
He bought back his wife. He redeemed you with his own blood. God's plan for his people is based on his grace and his mercy, and don't you ever forget it. It's not based on how many laws you can keep. It's based on his grace and his mercy. That's the only reason we're saved. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Romans 3:23. I'm just going to throw some verses in here. God proves his love for us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Romans 5:28. He proves it. The wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus. And I wonder if the wages of iniquity, if it's going to be in Greek, so it would be harder to fish it out than it would be in the Hebrew. But okay, so that's that. You got the idea? Gomer's bad. Gomer's like us. We're unfaithful. God is merciful. Thank you, God, right? Okay. Now, let's go for the rest of the story. Because there is the rest of the story, like Paul Harvey says. One who scattered will gather his people. The one who said, I will not have mercy, will say, have mercy. The one who said, these are not my people, will say, my brothers. That's your Messiah speaking here, I think. When God's people turn back to him, everything changes. That happens all the time. That's the plan. The hard part is getting people to turn back to him, because people have freedom of choice. It's all out there. All we have to do is ask questions. And if we just go bumble through life, Caroline, always remember to ask God questions, okay? Because that's how he gives you the answers. If you don't ask, he won't tell. That's what kind of a gentleman he is. And there's a whole bunch of people on this planet that haven't asked any questions. Which is why, and we haven't prayed enough or something, but anyway, that's whatever. We haven't asked questions, so we're all in this mess together, I guess. So Hosea, and we're going to watch this because this is going to change. The love story gone wrong and in need of correction. Let's get rid of that. And let's bring up something else here. A love story with the happy ending, okay? The works of this particular king who's going to come back and restore everything. This king will do was willing to cleanse us and to overcome the power of sin and death. He was willing to overcome the power of our sin, our ignorance. I don't know what to do with the iniquity thing here, but now can I get somebody to read that?
Now a leper came to him, imploring him, kneel down to him, and saying to him, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." Then Jesus, moved with compassion, stretched out his hand and touched him, and said to him, "I am willing, be cleansed."
That leper, that guy that had the leprosy was willing, represents, just like Gomer, he represents people with sin. He represents sin. And what was the Messiah's response to him? Of course I'm willing. I am willing, be cleansed. That's what he will say to any of us who come to him and say, "Oh, Lord, help me. Forgive me." This king opened the ears of his people in Mark 7:35. Bill?
Immediately his ears were opened, and the impediment of his tongue was loosed, and he spoke plainly.
Don't you wish that Jesus would do that for you? He will if we ask him. Lord, give me the words to say. Fill up my mouth with your words so that I can talk to people during this harvest time, right? This king is a righteous judge. Rights of the poor, John 5:30.
As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is righteous, because I do not seek my own will, but the will of the Father who sent me.
He's always after the will of the Father, and the will of the Father is to forgive and to heal and to cleanse. Who would want to serve a God like this? This king drank the cup of wrath for his people so that
Surely I can praise you for that. Surely I can follow you for that. Surely I can believe what you're going to do for that. Surely I will look into what the prophets are saying and I will believe them. Start the microphone. Lester, don't turn it down. I have no microphone. I have no light on.
All right, take your battery.
Oh my gosh, my light went out. And I just told you it was on. I know.
Only you didn't beep. It's not 1:30 in the morning.
What?
You didn't beep, and it's not 1:30 in the morning. No.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. All right. Now, do you need to turn the thing back on, or? On. Okay. All right. All right. So the king drank the cup of wrath for his people. Bill, you still with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Luke 22:42. Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done.
Hallelujah. You know, if he'd had his druthers, the human part of him didn't want to drink that cup. Right? But nevertheless, not my will be done, Lord, but Father, but your will be done, right? So the Father's will was done. And now the bride is preparing to go out and meet the bridegroom. That brings us to today. We are part of the bride. That's not a sexual thing. That's part of the bride, part of the bridal party that's going to rule and reign with him, okay? That's where we are today, and that's what we are preparing for today. Right? Amen. The bride will rule and reign with the Messiah. And we just kind of wonder sometimes what that might be like. Do you ever wonder what that might be like? Or did you think you were going to go sit on a cloud in heaven somewhere and just eat bonbons and just go, I don't know what to do. What are we going to do today? What year is it anyway? What do you mean? We've been here for 50,000 years? We haven't been doing it? That's what most people can't explain that. You have conversation. People don't.
That's Greek mythology.
That's Greek mythology. That's right. Let's see what the Bible says. You ready for this? Okay. Let's talk about the works of the bride. Oh, we can't. You're not going to get saved by works. I'm not talking about getting saved by works. You're already saved. Now I'm talking about what your job is. We find them all in Proverbs 31. Myra, I need a lady to read this part.
Proverbs 31:11. The heart of her husband safely trusts her, so he will have no lack of gain.
Okay, so we were talking about Gomer and Hosea, right? God and Israel. So who is the husband in this part?
Christ.
Okay, Yeshua. Okay. Yep, Yeshua and yes. Okay, very good. So now we know who's who. Let's see what happens here. The heart of the husband safely trusts her, so he will have no lack of gain. Sounds like somebody's going to gain something, and he's not going to have any lack of gain. He's not going to lack anything. The bridegroom is not going to lack anything. Wow. All right, let's see where that takes us. Okay. Chris, why don't you read that?
Luke 16:13. No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon.
That's why you can't. The children of Israel couldn't serve Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh and Baal. It doesn't work. It ends in disaster. Okay, because no servant can serve two masters. Okay. Cliff, why don't you read this one?
But the ones that fell on the good ground are those who, having heard the word with a noble and good heart, keep it and bear fruit with patience.
Okay. We can look for qualities of Israel, the bride, the partner of the Messiah. These are the qualities. The bride bears fruit. Okay, Myra, could you? I think I must mess that last one up a bit.
Proverbs 31:16. She considers the field and buys it. From her profits she plants a vineyard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep track. Pay attention to these words, these descriptive words here. Okay, we'll come back to it here in a minute. Cliff.
I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. And that was John 15:5, and now to Colossians 1:10, that you may walk worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing him, being fruitful in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of God.
So she considers a field and buys it, huh? So she can bear good fruit. She's going to be producing fruit. Or what she's doing is going to be producing fruit. The bride keeps her lamp burning. Myra?
Proverbs 31:18. She perceives that her merchandise is good, and her lamp does not go out by night.
She's looking things over. She's supervising, or she's looking things over. That looks pretty good. Let's see, when God got done creating things, he said, it's good. And when we got done with creating man, he said, oh, that's very good.
That's what he said when he created Eve.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Matthew 5:16. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good
Okay, so she's making sure that her lamp doesn't go out, right? She's got her making sure that God is saying, or Jesus, Yeshua is saying, make sure that your lamp shines before men, so that they can see your good works, right? And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. The darkness still does not understand you. It hates you, but it doesn't understand you. You know, when I say darkness, I'm talking an evil entity, right? Evil. So the bride extends help to the poor. Boy, she's a busy lady. Is she not? Okay, let's see what this says.
Proverbs 31:20. She extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy.
James 1:27. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. James 2:17. Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead.
There's that word works again. We just can't go around saying, I have faith, I don't have to do anything else. I can just sit down there on the rapture bus stop bus, and that's not doing anything. I'm just going to look at him and pick me up. The bride is clothed in armor, in the armor of strength. This is probably Cliff's favorite one. Go ahead, Mar.
Proverbs 31:25. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come.
This is a strong woman. This is a strong partner that God has, be it man, be it woman, right? His bride is strong.
Ephesians 6:10-18. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil.
There you go. That's Cliff's favorite verse. The bride is wise. She's not just smart, she's wise.
Proverbs 31:26. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness.
This is not a crabby old woman. These are not crabby people. These are wise people because they understand how things work in God's kingdom.
James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to you. James 3:17. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruit, without partiality and without hypocrisy.
Are you getting a description of what we're supposed to be? What we're supposed to be like, doing? Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
The bride is not idle. Proverbs 31:27. She watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness.
Second Thessalonians 3:10. If anyone will not work, neither shall he eat.
You see how these pieces they just fit together like a piece of the puzzle, don't they? Proverbs, they're all found in Proverbs 31. We're just reading down through, starting at verse 10. We're reading down through the list of them. And commentary. How about the bride? The bride fears Yahuwah, not in ooh, but in respect and awe and honor. Go ahead.
Proverbs 31:30. Charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised.
1 Peter 2:17. Honor all people, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king.
We're almost done. Just a minute. The bride is blessed. Go ahead, Myra.
Proverbs 31:28. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her.
Who's your husband again? Yeshua. Yeshua's going to praise his bride. That's when he says, well done, thou good and faithful servant, right? Or an example of?
Ephesians 1:4. Just as he chose us in him before the foundations of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him.
Holy. That doesn't mean religious, once again. That means set apart. It means set apart. Doesn't mean religious. It means you're set apart from all that Baal stuff that's going on. Recognizing that he has set you apart. Myra?
The woman who fears the Lord, an excellent wife who can find. She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff and her hands hold the spindle.
Okay, so I just put all those verses there together, but I just, down here in the black box, so I just kind of highlighted that she's trusted by her husband. The Messiah should be able to trust us, right? There's no lack in that house. She makes wool and flax. This is a busy lady, or this is a busy people. There's shipping and agriculture going on there. She brings in food from afar. Over here. She rises while it's still night and provides food for her household. She's got a food service thing going on. She considers a field and buys it. She's a realtor. Is this making sense? Can you see we're describing the kingdom of heaven going on here. There's industry going on here within this. She perceives her is profitable. She dresses herself in strength. There's fitness going on. There's manufacturing, marketing, quality control. Can you see those things?
Yes.
We're not even done with the verse yet. Oh wait, there's more.
There's more. She opens her hands to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow, for all of her household are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine, linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates.
I don't know about you, but I hear economy, I hear jubilee in there. I hear freedom in there. I hear economies all around the world working. I hear the 7 mountains message at work. We wonder what is heaven going to be like? It's going to be like an economy, and it's going to work. None of this up and down stuff. None of this up and down stuff. The whole thing is going to work. I don't know. Can anybody say God is good? God is good. So we have, hello. I hear, when I read these things, I think I can, there's probably, most of the people in this room, your face, your name ran across my, as I was reading through these. Revelation 19, 7 to 8, the marriage of the Lamb. And the bride was permitted to wear fine linen, bright and pure, for the linen represents the righteous acts of the saints that we just read from. You wonder what righteous acts are? It's about taking care of other people, right? The plan is that we become more and more a reflection of His Son. That was the whole idea, be like Him, right? In terms of how we live and how we treat others. And which brings us right back here to God will keep His covenant with us. We have time. Do you remember, this was the picture from the wedding rehearsal that was taken the last day of the Feast of Trumpets? Tabernacles? Yeah, that's what I meant. And this was the picture that was taken by Myra over here at whatever it was, 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:14 in the morning, something like that. So I'm just gonna play this for you, because this is a celebration of a rainbow. I mean, that rainbow, that's the mark of His covenant, is His rainbow. You know, some groups have stolen that and just trashed it, the whole idea. But this is the covenant sign, the rainbow. Watch this. And it is just, to me, if I was going to typecast Jesus in a movie, he'd be my guy.
And we have the same haircut.
You have the same haircut? Okay, so we'll go for. I have some. Will you give me another 15 minutes for a video? This happened this last week in Washington D.C. and this is one of the national prophets. The guy with the long hair, the odd-looking guy. That's one of the prophets, Robin Bullock, and he's on Flashpoint. If you're familiar with Gene Bailey's Flashpoint, and these guys are a couple of Christian commentators, I think. And so let me have, in case you did not hear what happened in Washington D.C. this last week about abortion and the Red Sea parting and so forth, you need to hear this. So pay attention and let's enjoy this together.